Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm Gavin, and this is the Vanguard interview series. We're having conversations with activists, candidates, other unique voices in the political realm, and we've just been joined by Blair Walsingham, the Democratic nominee for U.S. Congress in Tennessee's 1st Congressional District. Would you be able to introduce yourself a little bit, Blair, and tell listeners what you're about?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Blair Walsingham, and I live in the very rural, very red district of East Tennessee, which is the top right corner. Most people are familiar with maybe Dolly Parton or Dolly World, the Smoky Mountain Park, and that is right at the edge of my district. To give you an idea of where we are, 10 of the poorest counties in all of Tennessee, 8 of those are in my district. There's a lack of job opportunity, subpar education. We have a healthcare monopoly. Our rural hospitals are largely closing, and people are suffering. So I meet a lot of residents who don't have electricity, running water. We barely have internet access. There's a lot of things that we need to do out here, and that's why I'm running for Congress.
Yeah, so you're in kind of that more like slightly Appalachian part of Tennessee, very rural, like you said. Is that accurate? And
Absolutely.
that's a kind of part of the country that's totally been decimated by the outsourcing of the trade deals, which has kind of been a bipartisan consensus in Washington, as well as just in general kind of gets the short end of the stick. I feel like a lot of times, along with West Virginia and some other parts of the country. Can you talk about some of the unique solutions that you're proposing that Democrats in Congress currently, and let alone Republicans, are not really proposing, not really meeting the moment right now?
Absolutely. We have many solutions that we could have done a long time ago to be helping people out. And one of those is a universal basic
Yeah.
income that is making a lot of headlines right now, but it's been around for hundreds of years. People have been
Hmm.
championing it back to Thomas Paine,
Yep.
MLK. It had actually passed the House back in the 60s, and then it got stuck in the Senate. So it's getting more traction now due to COVID-19. So more people are meeting financial crisis that they didn't before, and they didn't understand how tricky it is or how many people fall through the cracks for the supposed safety net programs that we currently have. So I'm a big champion of universal basic income, about $1,000 a month for every adult, and that was before COVID. And there is currently bills up in the House and Congress being voted on that would be actually more, and it would be temporary through COVID. We're looking at about $2K a month per adult, $500 per child, just to ease the pain and suffering and job loss. And it's estimated we're going to lose 43% of our jobs after this, largely to automation. So
Right.
we need to address this, not just by saying, okay, we're going to make sure you can have shelter and food, but we need to bring jobs to the area. And one of the ways we can build jobs here that people don't seem to be talking about is we have legalized hemp now here,
Hmm.
and we don't have a processing plant. And if we could bring a processing plant here, we could create textiles. We can replace plastic with hemp,
Yeah.
paper with hemp. It's a quick growing crop. It's sustainable, economical. It's good for the environment. We can build houses out of hemp.
Yeah.
Hardwood hemp floors are actually 10 times harder than oak. And oak is a 10-year crop versus a 6-month crop for hemp. It's naturally fire resistant, pest resistant. It's phenomenal building materials. And they have hempcrete. We could also have a hempcrete factory here. And this would bring so much
Wow.
income, revenue. It'd be good for the environment.
Yeah.
And right behind that, legalizing cannabis would be immensely helpful for the economy, opening new businesses, providing more jobs. And I just think it's far beyond time that we let the prohibition go to the past where it belongs.
Yeah, thank you so much for talking about that, and I'm totally in agreement, especially with the hemp thing. It seems like we have right in front of us the solution to deforestation. For example, we have all these rainforests and forests around the world being cut down constantly for more paper products, paper towels, napkins,
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff. Meanwhile, we have all these fields in the United States of America, in states like Tennessee, where there's already people that don't have jobs and are struggling to find work, and it's just such a natural, obvious fit. Put these people to work, get this textile grown and processed and produced, and yeah, we can totally start, replacing some of the plastics and non-reusables with hemp products. I'm totally in agreement with that, and I think that's such a great point. Something else I wanted to talk to you about was you're a Humanity Forward candidate, correct? Endorsed by Andrew Yang.
Yeah, absolutely. Endorsed by Andrew Yang, Humanity Forward, and Income Movement for
Awesome.
that side of the board.
Awesome. Can you just talk a little bit about that? What was that like receiving Andrew Yang's endorsement? I was a big fan of his campaign because I think it really changed the way a lot of people thought about government on both sides of the aisle. Democrats and Republicans have been so, voters at least, have been so programmed to think of any sort of, welfare as, a handout, as something that should be looked at kind of in a, unfortunate or dirty way. But Andrew Yang really changed a lot of people's minds on both sides of the spectrum by pointing out that, like, no, these are our taxpayer dollars. There's no reason they can't come directly back to us, whether that's in the form of, social welfare, or a universal basic income, just literal money in the pocket. So I just wanted to ask you what it was like receiving his endorsement, and how you plan on, building on the movement he started.
Yeah. So what I loved about Andrew Yang's campaign, and what relit this fire in me to want to serve my country, is his nonpartisan commitment and his unification, the way he focused on bringing people together. And even at his political events and running on the Democratic ticket, he would say, who here is a Republican? Who here is a Trump supporter? Let's open them with welcome arms. Let's end this divide that we have been force-fed against one another. And so to have him endorse me was just, it was very meaningful to me, because that is the whole point of my run, is to help people. I do not care about your label. I don't care what identifier you have, what religion you choose, who you love. I want everybody to be successful, to be happy, to be healthy. And that's really what this should be about. Our representatives should be voting on the welfare of Americans. And right now, like you mentioned, the welfare, we have a corporate welfare system. And by all means, that's what it is. We are giving all of our taxpayer dollars away to big business when we have people suffering, and we're the ones working for it. So the universal basic income is a way to make sure our money, our hard-earned dollars, are coming back into our hands and investing in our individual needs and our communities. We'll see business start up. We'll see people happier, healthier, crime rates go down, abortion rates go down. It would be phenomenal just to have that reinvested in us. So I work very hard to educate people on what it actually is, and avoid those knee-jerk reactions like, it's a handout, it's free money, or it's regressive, we're going to be paying for it. People really don't understand the inner workings of it. And I particularly focus on this because I was one of those people. I said, heck no, that's buying votes. I don't want to pay for it. Where's the money going to come from? But once you learn about it, and that is it, the barrier is education.
Yeah. Yeah, I will agree. There's a couple times on the debate stage and stuff where it kind of started to sound like an infomercial or something, like, go to this website for $1,000 a month. But overall, it was when the substance wise, it was totally, the right answer. And you even go a little bit farther than Yang as far as proposing universal health care. I mean, he definitely talked about it a little bit. I know at the beginning of his campaign, he was kind of on the Medicare for All train, and then stopped talking about that a little bit. Do you think that Medicare for All is the right kind of legislation we would need to achieve a universal healthcare type system?
So ideally, if I could wave a magic wand, yes, everybody gets healthcare. We're all gonna take care of one another and make sure we're all healthy. It's really important. If you look down at the breakdown of it, though, so our senior citizens require more care, more expensive, more surgeries, and our younger folk actually have less medical expenses. And if they were healthier in the first place, it would be even less. We'd see less emergency room visits, which people don't understand this either. So throughout the year right now, people who don't have health coverage, they end up going to the emergency room. They can't see a doctor. It's immediately more expensive. And then the fact that you don't have insurance, the price is actually different for somebody who has insurance because they broker those prices. So you walk in the door, you're already paying more because it's an ER, and then you're going to pay even more for the same procedure because you don't have insurance. And at the end of the year, when these bills aren't paid, it comes out of our tax dollars. We pay for that. And people don't understand that. They go, oh no, well, people get medical bankruptcy and the hospitals go after them. Yes, that's true, but that bill is already paid. They're just trying to recoup those funds. So it's actually more expensive for us to not give healthcare to everybody than it would be to just implement it and have people healthier to start with. But just giving everybody insurance doesn't solve a lot of our problems. It doesn't change the fact that our pharmaceutical companies are charging far too much and profiting off of people suffering. It doesn't put caps on our copays or if you need a medical device put in you, we need to regulate these prices and make sure that they're not making insane profits off of that's affordable for everyone. And we have a local healthcare monopoly system. So we have to change other things. Giving healthcare doesn't make more hospitals open. We have to abolish the certificate of need so we can actually have the competition so that more doctors are going to be accountable in the service they're providing. So there's a lot of things that we need to do other than and just give people insurance. And it's hard to legislate that away with how much pharmaceutical power has and how many politicians are already bought out by the medical monopoly. It's just it's the real reality of it.
That's a great point, and I actually agree to a large extent. I've seen similar arguments kind of saying that we should actually be pushing for more of a Medicaid for all system because it wouldn't keep in place so much of that corporate rule over the healthcare system that Medicare does keep in place. However, I do think it is true that, I mean, just with the concept of Medicare for all, like we saw when, Bernie Sanders was proposing it, even just the concept of taking away the health insurance was, so impossible for, the mainstream media to grasp, for so many people in Washington that are, bought and paid for by those health insurance companies. So I think in some ways Medicare for all is kind of a first step in that it acknowledges that those, rapacious middlemen do need to go. And then we can, abolish the entire for-profit healthcare system in the first place. But I definitely see what you're saying, and it's not perfect legislation. In my opinion, it's more of a first step towards something greater. Something else I wanted to ask you about is that you're a veteran of the Air Force, correct?
Correct.
Cool. Would you mind speaking just a little bit to that experience and why you think in your platform you have ending our endless wars? Why you think that's something that's necessary, especially as someone who's been there on the ground, or in the air.
Yeah. So it's funny you say that because actually the Navy has more airplanes than the Air Force has ever had.
Yeah, nice.
But so I grew up in a military household. Both of my grandfathers were Vietnam vets, and one of them was a World War II vet. And my father served in the active duty Air Force, and he was constantly in war zones. I don't know a time in my life where he wasn't deployed to a war zone. He's been shot at, drug across the desert, multiple surgeries, suffers from PTSD in some of the worst ways, and it's heartbreaking. Yet when I was 17, I enlisted in the Air Force, and I knew that I wanted to serve my country, and I wanted to be in the military, and I want to follow in my father's footsteps, and that is what I did. So I came in as an active guard reservist. It's an AGR, which is an active component within the Air Force National Guard. They have active duty people because you always have to have somebody there. So I came in as services, which is a caretaker role for the most part. Largely, I ran the dining facility, which is a lot of cooking. We do bear-based setup. We run the gym facilities, the lodging facilities, and mortuary affairs. I was very lucky to not have to actually do mortuary affairs in the field. I did get diagnosed with cervical cancer in my last year of service, and I ended up cross-training over into airspace operations where I monitored airspace, put in flight patterns. It was really boring, which is good because if it wasn't boring, that means something really bad was happening stateside. So I did a variety of jobs within that. I was a secretary of the base commander for a while as well. I worked in a higher level security clearance building called the Compound that regular military personnel can't even access. So that being said, I learned a lot, had a lot of intel. I have friends and family who, have told me their very intimate stories of the war zones along with my fathers and grandfathers. And these are the same wars. Again, my grandfathers fought, and we are still there, still doing the same thing, spending millions and billions of our dollars on this. And we need to be investing in America right now and fixing a lot of the problems here, and rebuilding America solves a lot of our national crisis and actually helps some of the other countries that are suffering.
Yeah. Is there a single, U.S. intervention that you think we should be engaged in, or that a single country that you think we currently need to be occupying as we are?
That is a tough question. And I am not a foreign policy expert. I do have, team members who work at the Pentagon and everything like that. But there's so much intricate details that goes into what's happening overseas. I don't think there's one particular country over another, though we are directly involved in suffering that is happening in these countries. And we need to discuss, not just as Americans, but with our allies, what we can do to help these other countries and where our involvement should be and should stop.
Yeah. Because like you mentioned, corporate socialism earlier, and I can't help but see every time, I see any reference to any of the wars that we're in, that it's just kind of a form of socialism for, Raytheon, Boeing, all the weapons manufacturers and defense contractors. And,
Hmm.
with all due respect to you as someone who's served in the military, I just wanted to get your perspective on that. Is that something that comes up a lot on the campaign trail? You said you're in a pretty red district. Like, do people ever push back on your messaging when it comes to that, or do you find a lot of agreement? I feel like that's a pretty bipartisan issue at this point, that no one wants to be in these wars.
Yeah, most people want to bring our troops home. We want to see them with their families. Can you hear that? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that was weird. I heard
It's
it.
thunder, but it's
Oh,
like
wow.
terrifying. I've never heard such loud thunder in my life. I was like, is this something happening? I'm so sorry. Okay. No, most people want to bring our troops home, and we would like to implement, like I have a pledge to, I'm going to read it verbatim so I don't mess it up.
No problem.
Insist that Congress exercise the constitutional authority granted solely to the legislative branch to declare war. So while our president should be able to respond to attacks against the United States territories, military forces, and deal with immediate happenings, overall, Congress should decide who we're at war with and where we're occupying these places. And I would like to see that return. So there's a deeper conversation and looking at all those intricate parts, but largely people want to see our troops come home and the forever wars ended.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's just so funny every time I hear President Trump campaigning on, like, well, we made the military great again. We gave it all this extra money. It's like, I think most people would agree that they'd rather that money, that taxpayer money, be going to something that they can actually feel in a tangible way, and not just these abstract wars that are going on across the world for reasons that don't really relate to them. It's not like if we withdrew from Syria or whatever, people would, myself in Kansas City would be at some threat of, nuclear annihilation or something. So I just think it's, ridiculous that all this money is just being held up seemingly by, the Pentagon and the MIC. But I'm glad that you're speaking to that, and I'm glad that we're seeing a bipartisan consensus emerge. And I think it's ridiculous that the politicians aren't listening, because it's like, do we even how can we even call it a representative democracy if the majority of people don't want to be involved in these wars, yet unilaterally over and over again we get involved?
That's that. It's a combination of the disconnect of people who think their vote doesn't matter and they're not even trying to talk to the representative, and then the representatives who aren't trying to listen to their people. It's just their opinion or what's benefiting their pockets or their stock portfolio making our choices. And so we have to look at the oil industry. We have to look at truly bringing some jobs back to America and rebuilding our own infrastructure so that we can be more independent and secure national security, to term limits, to making sure people aren't sitting up here for 30 years making the same rules that affect their income.
And that's another part of your platform, correct? Is term limits. You're a believer in those?
Yeah, and I've heard the arguments to both sides. I listen to both sides on everything and try to find a well-rounded solution. Yeah. So the argument against term limits is you have to learn. Getting into Congress is a learning curve, and sometimes it takes time to get things through and make real change. However, if we had term limits, more people would be interested in getting in politics in the first place if they see it as an achievable goal. Yeah. And you're going to see more new and fresh ideas coming through the generations like it should. So I am a big favor of term limits, and I don't plan on sitting in office for too long, even when elected.
Cool. Yeah, one more question I had for you is just, when you're out talking, or I guess in the pandemic, not talking, how have you been able to, reach people and campaign and get out your message during this, really weird, unprecedented time?
So COVID-19 is definitely a curveball for campaigning. I was the canvassing operations manager for the state of Tennessee for Andrew Yang.
Oh, cool.
So I was cutting turf and going out and helping canvassing and talking to people and meeting with people beforehand. And then COVID happened like right after I started my campaign, and it became a big problem. So we've had to adjust and go, a little different route, and things like this, like having these podcasts and be able to answer questions that people can sit at home and just watch it. It's actually very convenient for a lot of people. But through my involvement with other things, I'm representative, one of two for East Tennessee for something called Rural Caucus, which connects the entire state to the bigger picture. What affects us over here is going to affect the rest of Tennessee and America as a whole. I'm the vice chair now for Sierra Club, which is an environmental group. Cool. So we do work there. Awesome. Yeah, so I get to do a lot of things that are still keeping me connected with my community. I still go out. I won't go to any indoor activities right now. It's not safe, and I don't want to put anybody else's safety at risk either. So I do outdoors with masks, social distancing, everything like that. But I've also done a lot of volunteer work throughout the campaign, such as we raised $6,000 for a group called Tri-Cities Mutual Aid to provide groceries to people, and I am a volunteer of that group. So when people are in need and we don't means test, if they say, hey, we need groceries, where are you and how many people do you have? And do you have any specific dietary needs? And we go get them groceries and we take it to them. Yeah. So there's ways to still be involved in the community without the traditional canvassing, as nice as it would be to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I just had one more question for you. So, you're advocating for these, kind of bold solutions that, in my opinion, are desperately needed right now. Universal basic income being, probably the most important. Yet, if you're elected to Congress, you're not exactly going to be received by a, Democratic leadership that is also embracing these ideas. We've seen Pelosi, directly kind of spit in the eye of her more progressive left flank. Pramila Jayapal has been, her provisions in the CARES Act were excluded. And what's your strategy exactly for affecting this kind of change that you want to see and that I so desperately want to see and that everyone knows is needed?
Well, first of all, we need to focus on building the bridges, the communication for people within our communities, because they're the ones who are going to be voicing to their constituents what they want supported. So it's good for us to be accountable as individuals to make sure we're voicing our opinions when these bills are coming about. And unfortunately, a lot of people just don't want to pay attention. So we've got to give people hope that we can make change and that their voice matters again. And behind that, so Nancy Pelosi, from what I understand, is not going to run for House Speaker again. So there may be somebody new coming in who maybe is more willing to listen. And behind that, there's people all over the country, from local levels to the Senate to the House, Republican, Democratic, Independent, running on the same platform as I am, and they're winning. So we're going to have a lot more people coming into office who are going to champion these ideas very strongly. And we're seeing a lot of people such as Tim Ryan, who are championing it very loudly right now as well. So it is growing. We just got to continue to educate people and return power to the people, because that's what's missing right now.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for advocating for the issues that you are. And you're going up against incumbent, is that correct, in your district?
So Phil Rowe is the incumbent, and he's been in office for about 10 years, and he's actually stepping down. So it was an open seat. There was 15 on-ticket Republicans running, a few Republican write-ins, a few Democratic write-ins as well. And now it's down to myself and Diana Harshberger. She's the GOP nominee. She got less than 20% of the vote and is largely not supported by the Republican Party for a variety of reasons, which you guys can easily find on your own. Yeah. And it's also exciting because it's two women, and a woman has never won for this district for a full term or anything like that. So it's a phenomenal moment in time. It's a great moment for women, and it's a really big moment for the Democratic Party to have a strong nominee coming in, such as myself.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that you're exactly the right kind of Democrat for Tennessee, and hopefully that people are realizing that, despite their preconceived notions about the party, most of which are probably true, you're seemingly a different kind of Democrat. You actually are trying to, like you said, return the power to the people, which is what we desperately need in this moment. Thanks so much, Blair, for joining me this morning.
Yeah, really thank you. Can I tell your viewers just like one little clip? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So just based off of what you said, this is the moment. This is where we need to come together as individuals, as Americans. This is not Republican versus Democrat versus any other label. It's not red versus blue, left versus right, us versus them. There is so many candidates out there right now saying we are at war with one another, and this is a lie. This is to keep us divided and to keep things the way they are and the finances where they are. We have to come together and realize that we have been duped. And it's come from both sides. They tell us, you guys are fascist and the right wing is going to do all these terrible things. And it's the same on the other side. The leftists and the communists and the socialists are coming. Guess what? We all have so much in common than we have been led to believe. We want to be happy. We want to be healthy, and we want freedom. And how we get there is by working together to find real solutions to the problems we're facing. And that's what I want to do. Please go to blairforcongress.com and you can view all of my information on there. We're going to be updating the website shortly, and start voting for leaders, real leaders, get to know them, ask the questions, put the pressure on. And I look forward to being Tennessee's first district's next representative and finding, bringing more opportunity to this area. And thank you so much for having me on today. That was wonderful.
Yeah, of course. And I look forward to seeing you in Congress as well, and hearing about the good trouble that you're creating there.
Yes, the good trouble. We have to.
Indeed. Thanks so
Yeah.
much, Blair.
Thank you.